by a truck, like walk across a road. They said it was the same height as the truck.
That's insane.
So they have like, you know, like a Toyota Helix or something like
Right,
that, and
yeah.
it's literally the height, like a 6-foot-tall man, but a giant chimp.
And I mean, you know, to go back to the Bigfoot thing, you can totally see where we get that from, right?
For sure,
You
yeah.
look at this huge primate that's the size of a human being, and your brain instantly goes, it's mythological.
And I'm pretty sure that they didn't have photos of this thing until the 20th century, like the late 20th century.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a trip, man. They nest on the ground like gorillas.
Like a gorilla, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the locals have two different names for chimps. They call them tree beaters and lion killers.
Huh.
And the tree beaters are the ones that are up in the trees, the smaller chimps.
Sure.
And the lion killers are these big ones.
That live on the ground.
Yeah, and apparently there's some either video footage or there was some eyewitness account of one of them eating a leopard.
No way.
So it was a dead leopard that they were eating, whether or not they killed it or they found it, but they were eating this fucking thing.
Regardless, like, to be a primate at the top of the food chain eating a big cat, I mean, that's nuts. It's nuts.
Would you ever think of going there and trying to find those things?
Fuck yeah.
They're deep in there.
Great.
Yeah. I think they're in a place called Bili in the Congo. That's where they think they are. They've isolated a population of them there.
Really? My mom just got back from the Congo, and she still does, like, her own adventure stuff, and she was saying it's just, like, she's been all over as well. She's like, it's mind-blowing. Like, there's so much remoteness and unstudied area that I've had so many shots and pills and, you know, sedative, obviously. I actually don't do malaria medication. I just cover up, because it, and so I would rather be more focused, especially if I'm working with reptiles or stuff like that can, you know, envenomate me. So I cover up.
Wow. No?
That's silliness.
Really?
It looks silly.
It does look silly.
No, I just do, you know, good old DEET.
God, that stuff's gotta be bad for you too, though, no?
It melts you. Like, if you get it on, like, say, these things, it will melt the painting off.
I think that's what it's called. It's a device that heats up. It's got like an element inside of it and like a little canister of gasoline, and you put these sheets, and it releases this. They're out.
It's like clouds of them, right?
Yeah, because they're only alive for like 3 months. So like,
Right.
It's gotta go. It's like Alaska. Have you ever been to Alaska?
It's the worst mosquitoes I've ever seen.
Crazy,
They can,
right?
like, pick you up.
Yeah, they're like they're size of pigeons,
Right.
and their mosquitoes was inside the car.
It's insane.
And we were screaming like, "What the fuck? This is crazy!"
It is like something out of a Stephen King movie.
Yeah.
Like there's clouds, and yeah. That's why you asked me what I'm scared of. It's that fucking clouds of mosquitoes. It's all called Hex.
Oh yeah.
You've heard? Yeah,
HECS.
HECS. Hex. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I wear it for a lot of reasons because I definitely feel it helps me get closer to wildlife. But I've never carbon grid that actually holds the body's electrical energy and capacity, like the door of a microwave oven, like a Faraday cage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you naturally emit electrical energy, and then when you wear this clothing, it's got this.
It has an effect on the electrical energy that you release. But has it been proven that the animals can actually recognize that electrical energy?
With certain animals, yes. So we know electroreception is certain wildlife is capable of it. Birds use it. Electroreception is the word. So it's proven on some things, not everything. You know, understanding of animal behavior and animal one that might or might not help. So I feel it helps.
My friend John Dudley is a bow hunter.
Yep.
He's a pretty famous bow hunter.
I know John, yeah.
Okay, and he swears by it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wears them.
Yeah.
Okay, and he swears by it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wears them. It makes a big difference.
I think so. You know, like I'm not hunting. I'm just trying to get close. Notice the difference. But yeah, I like John. I feel like it helps me get closer, and you know, it keeps the energy down. Do you know what I mean? Like you're emitting all this energy, you see this bear. Keeps the energy down. Do you know what I mean? Like you're emitting all this energy, you see this bear or what it goes, and it keeps that in capacity. So I think we sense that. I think certain
recognize that, and just because we can't quantify it,
right,
and put it on a scale or weigh it or something like that, there's probably something going on.
Predator prey, right? Like if you're a lion and I'm an antelope, and my adrenaline spikes and my heart's going, and you know you're gonna come for me, right? But if that's out of the equation,
right up to them while they're wearing those things.
Yep.
And turkeys as well.
It totally. Like I said, birds, because birds have that in their brain. They have. I'm gonna quote it wrong, but they have something that they can detect electrical signals of what helps them migrate around the world. So for sure, I think it makes a difference.
Yeah.
beefed up dog catcher that I use to try and lasso them. I have a snake hook on me at all times.
A snake hook?
Yeah.
What's a snake hook?
So it's just this it's like a golf club with a hook on the end, so I can work with venomous snakes without it reaching back and grabbing me. It doesn't restrain them. It actually, like, their body sits like looking for wolves or something like that. Wolves are active at night. It's really hard to get a shot of them. Put a thermal bird in the air, and you see these animals running through valleys.
Wow.
Yeah, it's cool stuff. You'd love it.
Well, I'm fascinated by wolves. I think the wolves, to me, are probably... Yeah, we have a lot of coyotes around here, and basically they're little wolves.
Mm-hmm.
They're little sneaky wolves. But real wolves, like wolves in Yellowstone, and in the northwest area of the United States, they have got to be some of the most majestic animals.
Oh, they're fantastic.
They're
the hierarchy, and then on a hunt, like, you go left, I go, and then on a hunt, like, you go left, I go right, but without any verbal communication,
right.
And then coming together and making a kill. I mean, it's mind-blowing stuff.
Facial and recognizing cues and patterns that they've established before. If they see an animal, they know to flank it.
I definitely believe it's that. I definitely believe an intrinsic understanding of you go left, I go right, facial recognition, your expression tells me to do something, you're dominant, I'm passive, but I do think it's more than just visual cues.
That's where apparently the myth of the werewolf comes from, is that wolves are so smart, they think that a wolf and a person were like combined.
I don't believe that per se, but I can see how that came up. You know what I mean? It's totally, there's, again, like a coyote size, and they'll take down, a kudu or some huge antelope. I mean, it's incredible.
Well, African wild dogs are so cool looking. Black spots and the yellow and all the
stunning.
They look angry. They're like freaky looking,
I
think all of them come from the United States. I think all of them originally came from North America. Like, I think
Canids?
all canids came from North America. That's Coyote America, the gentleman who's been on the podcast before. What is his name? That is a fascinating book.
Yeah, I'm gonna write it down. I'd love to read it.
Great, and I did a podcast with him years ago. That's excellent too, and he has all sorts of crazy insight as to Native American, North American animals that went somewhere else, like horses. Wild horses from Europe all originated from North America
and were taken over and then
somehow
brought back.
Or another. From whatever, and then went extinct here, and then were reintroduced with the European settlers.
That's interesting. America's very well covered with eyeballs, but what's to say there isn't some remnant small population somewhere in the middle of nowhere that nobody has found? These horses that have been untouched by human beings for millennia.
Right.
And that's what I do. That's what drives me, right? Like we were talking about primates. I'm going to Borneo to look for an animal called the Miller's grizzled langur. It's a type of monkey. I just got back. I was looking for an extinct caiman in the Amazon. What's
the difference between that and the caimans that you see?
Just a different species. Just like there's many types of crocodile, there's many types of caimans.
What's different about it?
It's got a very elongated snout. If you've ever seen a gharial, if you know what that is, a type of crocodile with this long, crazy nose, it's like the alligator family, the caiman family. It's really long, skinny face, super light, super yellow coloration, just very different. Last time one was seen was, and I did wolves in Newfoundland and a bunch of really interesting stuff. So it's fun, man. You'd love it. You should come with. I'll talk to Animal Planet.
Scared. I'm such a pussy. What about
Animal Planet?
Scared. I'm such a pussy. What about giant sloths? What are your feelings on those?
So I've had probably 3 years of research into giant sloths, a chance at looking for it. But after all the research I've compiled, there is, in my opinion, one location on Earth. It's in high Peru, where nobody goes. It's mountains, impenetrable. The only way in is a helicopter in the center. To me, but they all have these stories of these giant sloths, right? They were all hunted to extinction. However, they've handed down these traditions. But nobody, except for a tiny handful of far out people, have ever really got into this impenetrable ball. And I think if they're anywhere, they're in there.
Wow, I saw Doc. He kept talking to people that had seen it, and he never could get a hold of it. But he had been there for years.
Isn't that crazy though? Like, why?
Yeah.
What if you're a little Amazonian villager? You don't read, you don't have TV. There's no reason to make up scientific, science fiction. Why?
5
Good
days
point.
in,
Yeah.
you're exhausted, covered with mosquito bites. He's like, any day now.
Yeah,
We're almost there.
Just over the next hill.
He's just gonna wait for you to fucking rot.
Next hill.
He's just gonna wait for you to fucking rot. That would be a mean man.
That's a mean guy. That's a mean guy.
Leave you on a log. All right, buddy. Pat you on the back. It's like the thing that people say about everything. Why would someone lie? Well, I don't know. People lie for a bunch of weird reasons.
People do it.
People are crazy. They make shit up.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's like you have to take an eyewitness report of an extinct creature or a zoo crypto creature with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
But you still have to put the cameras out. I bait. I scent. I do all of that stuff to try and get evidence of my own. Because just going with eyewitness reports is, like you say, it's nothing.
Has there ever been any eyewitness reports that are just too ridiculous? Where you're like,
Oh, for sure.
like what?
Oh, man, loads. He's like, yeah, there's Black Panthers, too. They, like, hang out together.
Black
And I'm like,
Panthers in Australia?
Exactly. I made the same face you did. So I'm like, okay, tell me more. And he's like, yeah, they hang out over there. Okay, tell me more. And he's like, yeah, they hang out over there. Okay, tell me more. And he's like, yeah, they hang out over there. They jump around with Black Panthers.
Oh, they're just fucking with you.
And I'm like, well, that's the thing. I'm like, you're
That you said you got to get helicoptered into.
There's a few. There's a few. Yeah, you'd be surprised because, we're here, we're in a city, we're so used to our modern conveniences, but there are totally untouched pieces of the world still.
Well, do you know David Cho, the artist?
I don't.
He went to the Congo. More eccentric people that I know. He's a multi-millionaire, made a shitload of money gambling, and also he made a shitload of money because he Facebook painted. He made a shitload of money because he painted. Yeah, he painted.
What does that mean?
Painted,
like the wall?
Yeah, the inside. They hired him to paint, do these murals, and they gave him weird shit. And one of the things they did is like, hey man, you want to go look for a dinosaur? He's like, fuck yeah, I'll go.
Absolutely. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. But there's this video of him. I want to say he was like 25. Young. Yeah, look at him there.
Oh yeah.
So he's in the jungle in search of a fucking dinosaur.
But who knows,
Yeah.
right? Why not investigate it, kind of thing?
But I mean, how big of an area would there have to be for there to be a species that we are not aware of? Like, how big of an area?
Oh, I mean, it's a generic question because we discover you'd have to look up the numbers, but it's like later this year, and it is an antelope. Like, they call it the Asian unicorn, because for generations people have been talking about this Asian unicorn, and Western world's like, yeah, whatever. Somebody went down there into the Laotian mountains and was like, here's a skull and here's a skin. There's villages and tribes and people, and they're like, here's this animal, here's a skin, here's a skull. And since then, I think one trail camera photo has ever surfaced. Like, nobody's ever successfully documented it. Because it's just this incredibly elusive animal. Like, whether it has super sensory organs, around forever, little tribal people have been talking about it in like a mythological way, the same way they would talk about dinosaurs in the Congo. And the Western world's going, sure, buddy, whatever you say. And then somebody finally goes down there, does an expedition, just like David did, and goes, oh, it turns out it's here.
Wow. Giraffes and
Sure.
things that are absolutely real.
Sure.
But they also have a even more compelling need to search for things that are not quite sure if they exist or not.
I don't know, man. I think it's human nature. Populace, I feel like once we know something's there, we want to know what the next thing is.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think? Like, why is it that we're so fascinated with answer?
I think it's probably a side effect of our compulsion for innovation. Like, need to search for things that are not quite side effect of our compulsion for innovation. Like, fire to find animals that we didn't know are real or weren't sure are real.
Well, knowledge is the foundation of that, right? To go to a new planet, we have to have the knowledge of how to get to go to a new planet. We have to have the knowledge of how to get there, right? To go to a new habitat, we have to know what's there. And
what do you think when they found that Flores man in Indonesia?
it's amazing. I'm not an It's amazing. I'm not an anthropologist, so that's not quite.
Has that been 100%? Is that 100% agreed upon?
I've only seen cave dwelling. Yeah, little person. Yeah.
Existed alongside human beings as recently as like 14,000 years ago.
Right.
Which is like,
I think it's completely believable. I think it's completely believable. I mean, Khoisan people in the Saharan desert are tiny. They're
big?
like 4 feet. Human being as like as like a hunt, like an old Englishman with his big mustache and his musket would go hunt these people.
Whoa.
And now we have an understanding that they're people. Like you can't fucking go and hunt them. But like, what's to say there weren't tribes like that all over? Khoisan, yeah.
Let me see what these people look like.
They're, in my opinion, they're beautiful. Like, you'll see what you think, but they're very small. They're desert dwell. There's not a lot of resources in the desert, so you don't get huge. So they're perfectly adapted to the desert life.
They really used to hunt them?
Yeah.
And they look...
See?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like those people. Those were kind of taller Khoisan, but those are Bushmen.
Wow. So who are these people that used to hunt these?
Was like the old English explorer would go and conquer Africa and hunt these people like they were an animal, You know what I mean? It was like very recently they were still under hunting. And they're people.
Yeah. Jesus Christ. Yeah, so that's probably what happened to a lot of the non-Homo sapien human type people.
I would think so. And even if it's not,
that is so dark,
right?
They would go and hunt small people with a rifle.
Yep.
It's nuts. Are there photos of people like posing with the dead ones?
Again, I'm not an anthropologist. I'm not.
Oof.
Yeah. It's brutal.
Oof.
Yeah. Parts of like Russian Arctic, Norwegian Arctic. There's areas in Asia that are still unexplored, believe it or not, regardless
Really?
they're populous. There really are. Deep China, there's some very unexplored areas. Northern Myanmar, I don't know that one specifically. There's, especially doing what I do, I hear them all the time, right? Oh, you got to go look for Bigfoots or pterodactyls or whatever, mammoths. Right. Could there be a large reptile that perhaps flies? Or it's possible. Is there a pterodactyl as we know it? I highly, highly doubt it.
But a large reptile.
There are still megafauna to be discovered.
Really?
Not a lot by any means. And I might get ridiculed as I go back to my scientific community for saying this, but my belief is there are these isolated pockets where small populations of megafauna still exist that we don't know about.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Well, South America.
Not that much. I mean, Australia, if you're not on the coast, there's nothing.
Right.
There's all these huge chunks. Papua New Guinea, same thing. Nobody goes up into the highlands there. They just found it there, as you saw. I mean, there's crazy stuff.
Now, what do you think about these guys that are talking about...
They call it de-extinction.
Is that what they call it?
That's what they call it. Yeah, de-extinction is, to me, it's fascinating, especially if it's something like, say, the passenger pigeon, right? We used to have wiped them out, and now they're saying, we can take the closest living, heal the ecosystem by putting that back, right? That being said, we still need to learn from our mistakes. Like, we need to take into account what we did and why we did it. And, like, do I think there should be a Jurassic Park and a bunch of mammoths and T-Rexes? Absolutely not. That's a waste. Whether we can or cannot do it, to me, that's a waste of scientific resource.
Pigeon, isn't like 90% of everything that ever existed extinct?
Sure, absolutely.
So does the ecosystem adjust and evolve, and would reintroducing something like a passenger pigeon, would it kind of fuck things up that exist now where new animals have taken a different position on the hierarchy?
It's too short an evolutionary time. So we are wiping out things more quickly than the world can adapt. So, you go into an environment and you take out all of the apex predators, the prey explodes, the grass gets eaten down, everything collapses. Now, if you left that environment over time, over evolutionary, something would evolve within the environment to adapt the prey so that it didn't wipe out the environment. That's just kind of the nature's balance. But when you go in there and do it in 10 years or 5 years, it throws off the equilibrium. So when you, in theory, when you reintroduce something that's been, and it's not theory, it's science. They've shown.
What did they do in the Channel Islands?
So I was actually a big part of that, and I loved the project. So the California Channel Islands were settled by agriculture. There were sheep, goats, pigs, blah, blah, blah. There was by agriculture. There were sheep, goats, pigs, blah, blah, blah. There was brought over there, right? And so not Catalina, but think about the northern Channel Islands. What happened was when all these animals were brought in, all the farms, there was an animal on the Channel Islands called the Channel Island fox, a very gorgeous, cute, cuddly little fox. You can see him if you go to Santa Cruz Island. There's loads of them now, thanks to... Anyway, they were like, okay, the fox is being... There it is.
Aww,
isn't he gorgeous?
Look, a little cute face.
So the fox is being wiped out through habitat. You know, the habitat's getting destroyed. And that's just the keystone. There were several species that were on the decline. The cows are getting... The livestock is wiping out the habitat. Livestock is wiping out the habitat. The foxes are declining. Well, obvious answer, let's remove all the livestock. So we removed all the livestock, right? Through helicopters, it was a lot. This is a very abridged version of what happened. But now we've got the golden eagles also pushed out the bald eagle, which are fish eaters, which lived on the island. So now after loads of years of removing golden eagles, like relocating them, removing all of the livestock, now you have a healthy population of Channel Island foxes. The bald eagles are back there. No bald eagles, a ton of golden eagles, and a ton of pigs. And likely over time, pigs would have exploded to the point that they Easter Islanded themselves, right? They ate up all the resources, destroyed all the habitat, population collapsed, golden eagles collapsed, nothing left on the island.
What do you mean by Easter Island themselves?
So you're familiar with Easter Island in South America? Trees, tons of food, blah, 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 blah. People settled there, and they said, this place is incredible. It's paradisical. And then they started cutting down the trees to fish. And then they started cutting down the trees. They started eating all the mammals. And what actually happened is because they were so remote, the middle of the ocean, void of life, void of anything, and they didn't have the canoes or anything to leave anymore because they cut down the last tree to build a boat or make firewood, and everybody there died.
Oh, shit.
So that's what happens when you use up every last resource.
God, so...
That's a scientifically accepted understanding.
And did they get this from fossils? They get this from bones? And is that what... So they've sort of pieced it together?
Yep, they take, isotope samples and... Yep, they take, isotope samples and... Yep, they take, isotope samples and measure carbon dating and yada yada. I think the heads are still a pretty big mystery. Why? I think certain people believe the collapse is known to be due to running out of resources.
How long did it go for?
Couldn't tell you.
Do they have an idea of how long the population lasted? Do they have an idea of how long the population lasted?
I think it's all published. Yeah,
Really?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it was a thriving population that flew too.
Between the late 1700s and the early 1800s, it was reported that the moai were knocked down, and the island seemed to... Did I say that right? Moai? You don't know? Knocked down, and the island seemed to have been a recent war site. The opening of the island to foreign slave trade eventually led to Easter Island's collapse by the 1860s. Wow. So it didn't take long. 1700s to the 1800s. Wow. So it didn't take long. 1700s to the 1800s. Wow. So it didn't take long. 1700s to the 1860s. That was a wrap. Wow. It was annexed by Chile. And so they've never tried to repopulate the island with trees. It's so crazy when they introduce animals to an island and it winds up fucking everything up, like Galapagos Island, you know, and I'm sure you're familiar with the Judas goats. Judas goats.
Judas, are those the ones in the Galapagos?
Do you know how they do that? How they eradicate goats? It's really interesting.
Not from the helicopters?
Yeah, well, this is how they do it. They go find the rest of the goats.
No way.
He goes and finds the rest of the goats, and they gun down those goats because they have the radio collar. Yeah, so these... What is this, Jamie?
It's a picture of a Judas goat, I guess.
So he's just white. He's just white.
Wow, that's what... hey.
Maybe.
Look it up. There's a couple other pictures.
How sad is that single...
To make sure that you don't have weird seeds in the bottom of your shoes.
I have to stop eating seeds, quarantine for 48 hours when we arrive.
Stop eating seeds so you don't shit it out.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yep.
Quarantine out.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yep.
Quarantine for 48 hours.
Yep.
Wow. Why is there so much concern about this one area?
I mean, it's been fixed in a lot of places. There's been great conservation efforts, and personally, I love what they're doing because they're trying to keep it pristine. You know, I think it's fantastic that there's a quarantine. I think it's great that I'm not supposed to eat seeds for 2 weeks before going there. And it's to keep it as perfect as it is. Now, the island that I'm going to melts and shreds your boots just walking on it.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's been described as hell on earth, so I'm stoked.
Wow. Now, what kind of protective gear do you have to wear other than your boots?
Just long sleeve clothing.
How does it get?
So the guy was telling me it's like 45 degrees Celsius, so it's well over 100.
Wow, that's incredible. You know, it's interesting, the idea of invasive species too, right? Because like Hawaii is a good example.
Yeah.
Hawaii. There's been talk of getting rid of pigs.
Yep.
And a lot of the natives are like, well, slow down, because if we hunt them, we eat them.
Right. At that point, it's Polynesian culture to eat a fire roasted pig and hunt your pig, and so it's a delicate balance. Like Hawaii is a perfect example. There's mongoose that were introduced that destroyed the birds, and there's turtles, there's frogs, there's all kinds of things that have been brought in there, but none of those are culturally significant.
Has this insane population of axis deer. We go and bow hunt them there every year. They're delicious, and they're plentiful, and it's one of the most really ethical hunts because you have to hunt them.
Right.
They're so overpopulated. There's 20,000 of them on an island with 3.
There's spots, and they're amazing animals. And you know, I'm all for it. Like, hunting is a tool for conservation. Absolutely.
Yeah, but it's just bizarre that they did that.
Yeah.
They decided to let deer loose, but people.
Right.
And then when this was done, it was like King Kamehameha, which is what year when they brought him over from Asia, right?
Yep, they're from Asia. Same thing with New Zealand, right? There's axis deer, there's goats, there's all kinds of things, or not axis, but red deer. There's all deer, there's goats, there's all kinds of things, or not axis, but red deer. There's all things on there.
Yeah.
And same thing, they're all brought in for sport.
Yeah, New Zealand's a weird one, right? So is Australia. They brought a lot of high fence.
Dude, you're gonna love this. So, onto my extinct animal thing. They took moose into New Zealand. They took like 10 of them, small population. He's found antler sheds. He's found bedding sites. On the
steepest, craggiest shale where the rocks real
like to say stranger than fiction. You look at it and you're like, that's not a real creature. Like some kid drew that.
Yeah, like a big old.
There's a recent one though. There's one from 3 years ago, and I looked at it and I'm like, that's 3 years ago, and I looked at it and I'm like, that's 3 years ago, and I looked at it and I'm like, I don't know who's saying it.
Amounts of time and all these all these resources. Is that it?
That's the one.
Yeah, that's 100. Stuck there to goof on people.
Are they like arguing that somebody could have computer generated it just to fool people?
All those, all those. And I appreciate it, right? As a scientist, I appreciate the fact that you have to have proof.
Right.
But it does get to the point, have to have proof.
Right.
But it does get to the point of ridiculousness.
Yeah, well, it's certainly possible. It's certainly possible that especially when you're looking at that insanely dense terrain.
Right. Right.
But so there are some efforts right now to try to de-extinct
of very, very intelligent genetic scientists that are trying to isolate specific genes that are specific to the animals that have been putting them into extant animals that are still here, to basically make this technology. Right now, what we can do is isolate a genome, put it into an existing animal that gives birth to an animal that looks and acts very much like the extinct animal.
But it's some degree different because it's like like a mammoth, for instance.
Right.
They would have to take some DNA from a mammoth.
Right.
That they would somehow or another get and
elephant.
Right.
And it would look like a mammoth, it would act like a mammoth, but the reality is it's a shaggy elephant with big tusks.
Right. So if you did like 23andMe on it, it would show, it's mostly elephant, but it's a little bit of a mammoth.
Yeah, I mean, if you think a mammoth, and then eventually you get this mammoth.
And so this would be with like gene editing tools like CRISPR or something along those lines?
Exactly.
Wow. And so how far away are they from doing this?
It's been successfully done a couple of times. They've given birth to a couple animals that are very, very close to the extinct animal. So I don't really understand it, but they've done it. They have successfully reproduced things that are gone, basically cloned things, and then the animal hasn't made it to adulthood.
Man, that seems really, really like playing God, doesn't it?
It is. It is absolutely like playing God.
So I've introduced these animals or de-extinct them.
Well, the valid reason is to conserve the ecosystem, right? Like we talked about. But I think it goes back to what we were saying half an hour ago, which is it's just that quest for knowledge, the can we do it, the innovation, right? Can we
about reintroducing the mammoth to Siberia, and that there would be some ecological benefit to reintroducing the mammoth because of the way they forage for food.
Sure.
They would have some sort of an effect on global warming.
Sure. That specifically.
See if you can find that, Jamie.
No. It's a great theory, and that's what science is, right? It's coming up with hypotheses and then trying to prove them. And it sounds cool. Like, do I want to see a mammoth walking around Siberia? Fuck yeah. But does that mean it's actually good for the world? Hard to say.
Whoa. Could bringing back mammoths help stop climate change? Sneaking it in because he wants to play God. Like, yeah, we're going to fix everything.
Yeah.
You fucking use coal. Who gives a shit?
Yeah,
we got mammoths.
We got mammoths.
Yeah, just give me the funding. Give me the funding.
Exactly, man.
Trying to make mammoths.
Yeah.
Trying to make mammoths. Make mammoths.
That's sadly very real.
Well, is it really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, if you're a scientist, right?
Right.
You, Joe Rogan, is a scientist. How are you going to make your career? Are you going to make your career by raising money through being like your career? Are you going to make your career by raising money through being like make the outrageous claim if you think it's going to fund your research?
Right. That's how you make your bones, right?
And that's one of the sad realities of some, certainly not all, science.
Well, mammoths too are so iconic. It's such a freaky animal to study.
You know, we had a what's right? That's the question, right? What's right? What's the right thing to do?
Yeah, there might not be a good law yet,
right?
But there might be there clearly is a finite number of these things. Of course, there has to be.
One single gold coin. He's like, it's here. I know it's here. Big spear fisherman, adventure guy. Goes, spends $10,000. Not a rich man. Spends tens of thousands of dollars.
Allahu Akbar.
Goes to this. They give him 3 or 4 pieces. You can see his treasure in the museum in Perth. Here's this guy. Would have retired, been a wealthy man. You know, had his whole
Stuff in the ocean, and they take it, and people become billionaires, right? They find Russian or Roman ships.
But for whatever reason, like, this was considered like
America.
Okay.
The guy that went to hunt it got investors.
Right.
And when he got the gold, he just kept it. When the investors asked for the money,
He shorted him?
said, I don't know what you're talking about. I lost it. Or I don't know where I put it. Or I don't know where it is. So I think he's in jail under contempt of court.
Oh, jeez.
Being asked, where is it? And he said, I don't know. He's taking lie detector tests. People think his kids have it or something like that, but they have no idea where it is.
It's a crazy story.
Well, that's a weird one too, because like, what are you gonna do with it?
Right.
Like, if people are staring at you, they're like constantly look. Where is it? Where is it? And you're like, I don't have it. They're gonna keep looking. Like, how much is it worth?
Millions. I think each coin might be worth $1 million. You might have something like 20 to 30 of them. It's like a lot of money.
It's insane.
Well, you got to bring it to someone who's going to give you a piece. You know, you got to bring it to someone, but then you're going to get caught. Where'd you get the $5 million?
Then what? Exactly.
Yeah.
Then what?
Found it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you do? Well, it's interesting when things are historical, right? You don't know, like, who does it belong to a museum? Does it belong to the person who finds it?
Right.
Like, what are the rules, and are we making these rules up as we go along?
It's
It's worth $20 million. I found the story. He's still in jail right now.
Wow. Jailed treasure hunter ordered to pay nearly $20 million.
Tommy Thompson.
Tommy Thompson sounds
What a
like the kind of
name.
guy.
Yeah.
That sounds like the kind of guy. Yeah. What is that island? There's one island that has like this crazy hole in the ground that was made by pirates, like Captain Cook or something like that. There's a television show about it. You know what I'm talking about?
The Curse of Oak Island.
Yes,
That's the show.
Oak Island. Yeah.
It's up in Canada, right? Oak Island's in Canada. Yeah.
Yes. And they have some crazy hole in the ground that
Right.
they're trying to figure out how to get into, but there's all these weird little traps and...
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah. What do they think's in there?
Some astronomically valuable treasure, right? And I believe the island's changed hands like 7 or 8 times because people trying to find it have gone broke, digging it up, excavating it, exploring it, and there's booby traps and like all this crazy stuff.
Yeah, there's some sort of a method that they've devised where if you go deep enough, it just fills up with water, so you can never get to the actual treasure itself.
Right.
So the people who put the treasure there might have fucked themselves. Like,
Totally.
we're assuming they're so smart that they buried the treasure in a way that nobody could ever get it out, but they might have just buried it in a way that they couldn't even get it out. Like,
I think that's the case. I think it's one of those like, oh, we're going to keep it here, and then they couldn't get it. I mean, who knows? But yeah, what a crazy story.
Yeah. So do they know who did it?
I'm not sure.
See if you can find something on that. The Oak Island. So that television show is, it's just like, they're just like going, well, now what, right?
I think they're just digging and trying.
So you can't suck all the water out, right? Because it's getting water from the ocean.
Well, it's
isn't it?
sub-sea level, so
Yeah.
it just, you know.
Constantly filling up.
Right.
So unless you go down there with a submarine.
I think they've put divers in it. They've had metal detectors down. I don't really know. I'm not super familiar with the show. I just know someone that was there. And, I think it's this pretty serious ongoing thing.
Buried treasure, right? Remember when you were a kid? There's X marks the spot.
The
maps.
coolest.
Yeah.
They found the so-called Knights Templar cross is one of the most exciting treasures found there.
Really?
But
They found it?
so-called. It says upon first glance, it resembles a Knights Templar cross.
Do they have a picture of this thing?
That's in the show right here.
So, yeah, when they find these, in the open ocean, when they find these things, it's whoever finds it gets to keep it, right? If it's in international waters.
I believe so.
So when they have like these ancient Roman ships.
You still have to bring it back into port and declare it.
مش ده اللي بيضرب 3 بس؟ اتنين كده. العب واحد. ده بيركب عليه 8. هيطلع معاه دايما.
That you haven't done yet?
Oh, there's a lot, man. I mean, the one that I've had on my bucket list since I was so there's a couple. One is there's one place on Earth left where there's true cannibals. It's Papua New Guinea, and unlike the missionary that went in, with an agenda, I would just love to actually see these cannibalistic tribes. So I'd love to do that. Nobody has successfully, unless it's happened very recently that I'm unaware of, successfully done source to sea of the Congo River. From guerrilla warfare, from crazy waterfalls, disease. That's an expedition I'd like to try. And then when it comes to wildlife, I mean, the list is infinite. There's so many of these animals that I'm desperate to try and find.
Those sound like very dangerous trips. Like visiting cannibals?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know how to say this without sounding arrogant, but that's what sounds exciting to me.
Right.
Is taking that shot that other people aren't taking.
So have people visited these cannibals and come out of there before?
Yep. There was a Nat Geo photographer who got some incredible photos. They're called the Caraway tribe, and he went in there. Took him a while for them to kind of assimilate and get comfortable, and then he got these photos that are just mind blowing.
Now, how often do they practice cannibalism?
It's not a daily thing. It is a spiritual thing where they actually eat the other tribes deceased after a war or an intertribal conflict as a way to ward off bad spirits. So it's not like a daily thing. It's not like they're going out hunting each other. It's more like when these things occur, they have to eat a certain kill or a certain body to keep evil spirits at bay.
Do they get that version of mad cow's disease that cannibals get? Was it Jacobs Creutzfeldt?
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think it's probably infrequent enough that they're not getting it. Because in the South Pacific, they got that all the time, but they were eating each other all the time. Yeah.
Well, I think you get it from nerves, right? In nerve tissue or brains.
It's brain, yeah.
That's where they're getting it from. It's essentially mad cow disease.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. Is this guy hanging out with them there?
It starts off with sounding he's eating something. I don't think he's eating people with them.
He's gonna eat a fucking person.
That's not a person. That's a pig or something.
Yeah.
I don't think they'd show that.
But yeah, look at the tribe. I mean, they just look amazing.
Yeah, but it is just so incredible that there's still people that live the way they lived many, many, many thousands of years ago, and they essentially just get their resources from the land, from the area they live, and they're just rocking it old school.
And then for me, the cultural significance is huge, but what's the biological area like? You're right. Nobody's going in there. How much biological study's been done? The answer is none.
And these people have large look at that lady. Oh my God.
Isn't she amazing?
Wow. Yeah. Have you read Sapiens?
Sapiens? No, I'm not sure. Evolutionary book about human history.
Noah Yuval Harari. I think that's the name of his. He's amazing.
Writing it down.
Yeah, it's a great book. But one of the things that they talk about in the book was these nomadic tribes that would. Yeah, that's it. Yuval Noah Harari. I fucked up his name. They would talk about these nomadic tribes that would kill the old ladies, kill the people that were burdens, and just shows
eat them.
No, just kill them. Just talking about when people became a problem,
right?
They would just kill them, and this was normal. But they got along together great. Everybody was laughing and smiling. Everybody's really friendly. But as soon as someone seemed to be a problem, they'd fucking club them from behind and.
It's this is going to sound just awful, but doesn't that make sense?
It kind of does. It sucks, but it kind of does.
Right?
Yeah.
You're a burden on the community or on the society. There's no fucking old folks home out there.
Yeah.
It's crazy. To us, in our culture, that's absurd, but as a culture removed from the rest of the world, makes sense. You're a burden, you've had a good life, it's time to move on.
And they're nomadic. That's the other thing. It's they have to keep moving. So if someone stops, and there's one guy, he was sick, and so they left him on a tree, and he became covered with buzzard shit because the vultures would just sit over him and wait for him to die, but he eventually recovered. And he caught up with the rest of the tribe, and for the rest of they called him something like buzzard shit or something like that. That was their nickname for him. Yeah.
Imagine being that guy. Imagine sitting under a tree looking up at vultures being like, it's moments till I die and they're going to drop down and eat me.
At least they're polite enough to wait for you to die.
It's true.
They don't the guy probably couldn't have fought him off.
If that was a hyena, yeah.
Yeah, dude. Hyenas. They're the trippiest of all the animals, the matriarchal society of them, where the females have the fake dicks.
They're amazing.
How bizarre.
So weird. Crazy faces, crazy biology and anatomy.
Yeah.
You know, that feliform, that cat-like, but doesn't belong to any family. Like,
Yeah.
super weird.
And
Love them.
They have a giant fake dick. The females
That's right.
have a giant fake dick they give birth to.
They do.
Birth out of, rather.
Yep.
Yeah, and they have unbelievable biting power, too, right?
Yep. The strongest mammalian jaw pressure on Earth.
What a weird looking animal, too. Don't like look, even with the way it
So
walks.
shouldered
Yeah.
and, you know, like,
like-
totally looks like a villain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like its upper body is like higher than its lower body. It's very strange.
Very.
What is it like when you encounter those in the wild? Are they sketchy?
Very cowardly. Very wary at all times. Like, I've encountered them a lot, and when you're in Africa, if you're taller than it, it generally won't attack you. So people get like super scared of hyenas. When I was a little boy, I learned if you're running in the bush and you see a hyena, stand up and put your arms up like that.
They say that about cats too, right? Like mountain lions. Look at that motherfucker. Jesus. Look at that thing, man.
So cool.
It doesn't
You
even
don't
look
like 'em,
real.
huh?
Oh, I sure.
It's very. To take down these enormous buffalo.
Sure.
So the cats, when you look at them, they look like a lot. That looks normal there.
But it's all relative, right?
That looks like a normal one, but some of them look so muscular.
Yeah.
They almost look fake.
Oof.
Oh, he's getting his. Oh wow,
Got the calf.
She's getting the calf.
Yeah, Cape Buffalo are terrifying too, by the way.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, let that go. Fuck it. But there's, very few things that they can eat on this one island. So
Sure.
they've developed this ability to just have larger frames, and they're much more muscular. And apparently what's really interesting is there's this pack that's really big, but then there's another pack that lives on the island that's normal size.
Huh.
Yeah.
So they must be eating the smaller prey species.
I don't know, man. I'm too stupid. But
It's the same thing. So
look at the size of that fucker. Look at that female.
look at the musculature
Yeah.
in the hindquarters
Yeah, I mean, she's built like a male. She's
Totally.
built like a large male lion. I mean, that is
on steroids.
Yeah, that's a big female.
Yeah. The same thing that happened in Newfoundland, Canada, with the wolves. You love wolves?
Mm-hmm.
So there was this island, Newfoundland, and these wolves, gray wolves, were isolated there for a long, long time, and all they were eating were moose and caribou. So they just got huge, and they were bright white because it was a snow-covered island like 80% of the year. And there were just these massive white wolves, all jacked, all shredded, chasing around moose and caribou.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's just the way nature allows animals to adapt to their environment is just unbelievably interesting.
It's what I live for, honestly. It's so fascinating. The ecological niches that each animal fulfills and the roles that they play within each other, it's all perfectly balanced. And to see it and understand it, it's fantastic to see the individual, but to understand the big picture of the environment and the roles that are filled, as you say, it's mind-blowing.
Yeah, there's a documentary on the Congo from the BBC from, I want to say, the early 2000s, maybe even late 90s. And it goes into detail about how all these animals have adapted. And dikers, so there's dikers in the Congo that swim underwater for as much as 100 yards.
No way.
And they eat fish. Some of them eat fish.
A fish-eating antelope that
Fish-eating
swims.
antelope that swims.
Nuts.
Yeah, and then all these animals that got trapped as this area, these grasslands turned into rainforest. These animals that were essentially like grasslands animals, like antelopes and
Right.
stuff, are stuck
Right.
in the fucking jungle, the swampy jungle. And you see like these big packs of like antelope running through this swampy jungle area where they just don't look like they belong there. They look like they
insane.
belong in fields.
And that's how speciation occurs, right? So that Daika over a millennia develops fangs to catch those fish and a crocodile-like face and webbed hooves, or, I don't know, I'm making shit up. But the point is, that's how you get these crazy new species. And here in the middle of Congo, in this tiny little pocket, is this animal that nobody's ever seen before, kind of thing. And that, like, to me, that's what it's all about. Go to the Congo, find that thing. Is it there? What is it?
That's why someone like me is so incredibly thankful that there's someone like you out there. I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there, but I want to look at your Instagram page.
I guarantee you'd love it.
I'm sure I would
I'm
love it.
100% sure.
I'm 100% sure you're right. I'm also 100% sure I'm not going. but I'm happy that you go. I mean,
Thank you.
I'm so fascinated by animals and just animal life and adaptation. I think it's one of the more interesting things about this planet.
Definitely.
Is these weird organisms that are trying to figure out their way to survival, and
we're
they're
just one of them.
adapting and moving and changing, and we're always finding new ones. Like, I found a fucking snake. I posted it up on Twitter like a week or so ago. A snake that has a tail that looks like a fake spider.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that fucking thing?
I'm not sure. Do you know the species of it? I know the species. If
It's
you said
from.
the name.
I think it's from Iran. And it's a rattlesnake.
Scaled viper?
Yeah.
Scaled pit viper? Is that it?
Yeah, it's a viper, not a
Yeah.
rattlesnake.
Horned viper.
Oh, horned viper.
Have you seen that thing?
I know what they are. Yeah.
It's
Incredible.
It looks like a spider.
Right.
And it tricks birds into coming down and try to snatch the spider. Here we go. The Iranian's spider
Look at that.
viper. Spider-tailed viper. Like, look at its tail. That is crazy. I mean, I'm looking at that in a video, and it looks like a bug.
Right.
And so this thing moves its tail, and it perfectly blends into the rock around it. Like, look at that.
Unbelievable.
I mean, that amount of camouflage and adaptation, like, how does that happen?
It's
Like,
incredible.
Look at this. It's boom.
Ooh.
Oh, gotcha, bitch.
Dunzo.
And the bird's like, what was that almost got me?
Yeah.
What
It's
an-
insane.
What an adaptation. I mean, like, you see the anglerfish. That's a very bizarre adaptation as
Yep.
well.
Same thing, just out of the head.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. I mean, the fact that creatures can create that without, it's not like they're doing it knowingly.
Right.
Some handful of snakes at one time started waggling their tail and realizing that birds came in.
Yes.
Right? And then over generational time, this tail evolved little spikes and little things, and all of a sudden you have this whole population of animals that look like that. Like,
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
insane.
what is it? How the fuck does that happen? I mean, how does something grow something like that? A lure.
Right.
Grows a lure off of its head. And it's like, hey, look, it's something for you. You want to eat it.
Look at that one.
Oh my god, that's got a worm. I mean, that thing literally has a fishing worm, like a bass worm. I mean, it's so amazing, all of this adaptation and all of these. Look at that fucking monster with a light growing. I mean, it's got a flashlight on its
Right.
head. But it's so amazing how much adaptation there is and how all these things sort of work together, right? Like there's the bacteria and the fungi and the plant life and the animal life and the predators and the prey, and it all sort of works together. And when something doesn't work, it just sort of drops off, and then the system sort of resets itself in a new order.
I mean, to me, there is you saying it's one of the most fascinating things. To me, there is nothing more fascinating. Like, I'm obsessed with it. I live for it because I find it so interesting.
Now, when you study these things, and do you ever try to think, like, how the fuck that happened? Like, if you see that spider-tailed snake, is there anyone that has, like, an idea? Like, that this was just a lucky break, that this one snake had a freaky tail, and then he got to fuck a lot because he ate a lot of birds?
That's the idea, man. I swear to God, you just summed it up. Like, that is the idea. One or two or three snakes kind of got this adaptation.
Just a random
genetic sequencing that led to maybe a white blotch on the tail. Something unique.
Doesn't it not seem like that, though? It seems like they fashioned it.
But over time, they did, but over millennia, right? Over thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years, what happened was, say there's two snakes with a white spot on their tail. then they have a baby and it has a little bit of deformation, right? A little thing sticking out. Then that snake all of a sudden catches more birds than the rest of the snakes. That snake now reproduces offspring, and its offspring that has a little bit bigger of a spike catches more birds. And so those become the prized animals to reproduce with, to continue the gene pool. And so that's what happens. It keeps evolving. It's like a peacock, right? It's got this crazy big tail that it's attracting mates with. It's not useful to the bird. You know, that's entirely made for showmanship, for peacocking, if you will. And it, over generational time, it gets bigger and crazier and more elaborate and more colorful, and the females literally flock to them. And that's the animal that continues on.
What I really wish there was a way, and maybe there will be sometime in the future, where they're going to be able to show you with like some sort of supercomputer sequencing, where they'll be able to look at the DNA of this thing and say, oh, this is the exact progression.
Right.
This is what it started off with, and this is what it became.
Right.
This is how some sketchy-looking forest chicken became a peacock.
Totally.
You know, this is how some freaky snake became perfectly adapted to its environment. I mean, that thing looks exactly like the rock that it sits on.
It's perfect. Yeah. It is incredible. Like I'm like you. I'd love to know who patient zero is. You know, who's the first one?
Yeah, because stupid people like me look at that and they go, okay, well, that's got to be a plan. There's got to be something. There's a higher power. There's something that like is looking after these things and making them evolve this way.
Right. It's. Yeah. I mean, it's super interesting.
What about like cephalopods like octopus and cuttlefish and the way they adapt to their environment? That's even freakier, right? Because they do it instantaneously.
And have you ever heard the theory that octopus are from out of space?
Yeah, we talked about that with Brian Cox the other day.
Yeah, I'm not super well read on it, but like it looks like a damn alien.
Yeah, he was very incredulous, but you know he's obviously smarter than both of us.
Right.
So,
so he gets to be.
It's like it's like me looking at that going, man, it doesn't make sense. Of course it doesn't make sense. I'm stupid.
Right.
But he's you know when we're looking at this, but this is apparently like peer-reviewed, published paper about the possibility of octopus being reintroduced, and I think it has something to do with the way RNA and DNA is on them. Right? Do you know?
I don't understand it well, but yes, it's like the thought that the population came from out of space because the DNA sequencing suggests something that makes it extraterrestrial adaptability.
Yeah, he was super skeptical because he was saying that they're essentially so close to everything else here that it doesn't make sense. But the other theory was it might be just this is the path of life.
Right.
And the reason why it's so close to us is that this is the way all life, even if it's extraterrestrial, gets established.
Sure. I don't believe octopus are from out of space, but I love the theory. I love the idea of it. It looks like it's from outer space. You know, it's just wacky.
Well, it's such a cool thought.
Yeah.
You know, that these things came from outer space. So, well, that's also a thought about psilocybin mushrooms from the weirder people, that they came on asteroids and they're spores.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this, but they've proven that I don't know about psilocybins, but certain mushroom spores are impenetrable to the vacuum of space.
Yeah, they can survive. Yeah, that's bananas.
I pick a lot of mushrooms, not psilocybins, but a lot of porcini, a lot of chanterelles. Like I do a lot of foraging. It's really fun.
Are you aware of Paul Stamets?
No, I don't know that.
Oh, he's amazing, man. One of my favorite podcasts ever. He's a mycologist and a fucking trip in every sense of the word. A super genius mycologist who had the craziest story about being in high school. And what did he say? He took 20 grams of mushrooms and climbed a tree during a lightning storm. Like something fucking, something where you hear him tell the story and your hands start sweating. You're like,
no way.
20 grams or 10 grams or 20 grams, like something fucking bananas. Like
something that would kill a moose.
Yeah. Well, they wouldn't kill it, but it would definitely make it think it's not a moose anymore.
Right.
And it essentially changed his life, stopped him from stuttering. He used to stutter, and he did this, and he stopped stuttering.
No way.
Yeah.
I've heard about guys that microdose with mushrooms, with psilocybins, and it heightens their focus and cures their autism. And, you know, I'm not very well read on that, but there's a whole idea that microdosing with these chemicals that are naturally produced can actually have very positive effects.
Yeah, there's quite a few people who do that. It's really common.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of people that do that. They microdose with that, and they also microdose with LSD. There's a lot of that going on. Yeah, a lot of Silicon Valley people are microdosing with LSD.
It's funny because the one person that I know that's done the microdosing with mushrooms from Silicon Valley.
Yeah, people grind them up into pill form, and in fact, a lot of fighters are doing that now.
Really?
Which is really strange. Yeah.
So why would that help you, like, as a fighter? It's not a mental focus thing. It's a physical thing at that point, right?
Well, it gets you into the flow state.
Interesting.
And so, like with fighters, the real thing is it's not just your skill, but it's your ability to execute that skill under pressure. Right? So there's an overwhelming amount of anxiety. There's extreme consequences to getting hit or going wrong, getting knocked out. The losing a fight is absolutely devastating. It's devastating emotionally. It's devastating physically. It's devastating psychologically. It changes your perception of who you are and how you fit into the world. And that sometimes, and not, I shouldn't say sometimes, oftentimes impedes performance.
Sure.
You know,
Can't come back from it kind of thing.
well, it's not just that. The consequences of it possibly go wrong make you hesitate, and it's the stress of it all is very constricting. It's very difficult to operate under that stress.
Sure.
The mushrooms, for some people, alleviate that stress and put you in this elevated state where they say, and I've never fought on mushrooms, but they say that when you're on mushrooms, you actually can see what a guy's going to do before he does it.
Interesting.
Yeah, you have a sense of what they're going to do that's a much more heightened sense than you would if you were just in a normal sober state.
So do you think you're picking that up through like biological cues? Like you could see the muscles twitching in the arm before the punch comes, or like how do you think that?
That's a good question. I haven't done it. I don't know. You know, I've never sparred on mushrooms. Or
It doesn't sound like a good idea.
But it's really common. They say it is a good idea. The guys who do it love it.
Yeah.
Interesting. And guys have had some really extreme positive results.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. I never thought as an athletic performer that athletic enhancement that would be a thing.
Yeah, it's not just I don't think it makes you move faster or hit stronger or hit harder, but I think what it does is it puts you in the zone.
Interesting.
Like there's states that you get into where you can't do no wrong, and they're usually very elusive. They come and they go. You know, you get them like. Do you ever play pool?
I did a little bit. I mean,
but you know how sometimes you play pool for a few hours and then you just all of a sudden you feel like you can't miss.
Boom.
Yeah, you just have this feeling of where everything's going to go. That's even if you're not very good. Sometimes those will come for like 2-3 shots, and it's the zone.
Sure.
You know, and that elusive state of like, and then sometimes you're like, wow, I can't believe I'm in the zone. Then it goes away.
Right.
You know, it's like maintaining that flow state.
But do you think it takes emotions out of it? Like, is that why you're in that state? Like, if you're not emotionally attached to that shot or that punch, maybe you can execute it better.
It's possible. I mean, there's a lot of speculation of what's going on.